She won't trust a man who keeps giving her everything he thinks she wants. She trusts the man who gives her a clear frame to lean on. The uncomfortable truth is that the more you provide without limits, the more she will test those limits to see if they are real. Today we switch from the endless provider who hopes for appreciation to the centered man who earns it with consistency. I will show you why the popular just give more advice backfires, the rule that replaces it, and how to apply it in everyday moments without aggression or games. Picture a simple date plan wobbling. She says she prefers 1800 hours instead of 1900 hours, and you, eager to please, scramble, call the restaurant twice, apologize for being difficult, and arrive breathless. The night feels off because your energy is off, and that subtle chill replaces what Norwegians call that koselig warmth, the easy comfort of a cabin glow. Tests enter when warmth is replaced by wobble, and wobble is what you signal when you treat every preference as an emergency. The cost is not money, it is the erosion of credibility. Each time you scramble to accommodate, you're teaching her that your plans are negotiable, your time is flexible, and your center can be moved. This is not the foundation of attraction. It is the blueprint for exhaustion. Before we go further, set the frame and the ethics. This is not about inflicting pain or playing dominance theater. It is about boundaries, respect, and consent. If there is disrespect, escalation, or any hint of aggression, you step away, protect yourself, and end the interaction. Strength is measured by self-control, not force. Our aim is steadiness, not punishment. We practice calm leadership, the kind that both people can predict and relax into. This matters because without ethical grounding, boundaries become weapons instead of walls, and we are building shelter, not battlefields. Let's define terms so they stop feeling mystical. A test is not a villainous plot. It is a coherence check, often unconscious, where she pokes the plan to see if your words match your actions. Do you really mean what you just proposed? Is the subtext behind time changes, teasing objections, or mild delays? Trust is predictability wrapped in respect. She knows what you will do, and she knows you will do it without belittling her. The signal of trustworthiness is not a louder yes. It is a clear no delivered without heat. Most men miss this because they have been taught that kindness means accommodation, when in reality, kindness means clarity. A boundary delivered with warmth is kinder than a resentful yes that festers into cold distance. Now autopsy the myth of the nice provider. He overextends with time, attention, and money to buy peace, which produces short-term gratitude and long-term suspicion. When you attempt to purchase harmony, you imply that you do not believe your presence has value on its own, and that implication is what kills attraction. Overgiving invites passivity in the other and exhaustion in you, which is not romance but a slow contract with bitterness. The provider thinks he is building credits. He is actually building contempt, both in her and in himself. Here is your reframe. You are not losing because you are kind, you are losing because you are outsourcing leadership and making your center negotiable. The rule that fixes this is simple, the rule of the calm no. A calm no sets the boundary without punishing the person, and because it is delivered early and steadily, it stops most tests from escalating. Boundaries do not push her away, they give her something reliable to approach. What does the calm no look like in real life? It is spare, steady, and specific. You keep the plan, you name a workable alternative, and you do not justify. You do not raise your voice or your pulse. You simply keep time with your own drum. The subtext is that you are fine with yes and fine with no, and this lack of neediness is precisely what makes your presence feel safe. Safety here is not softness, it is clarity. Let's stage an A-B in the same scenario to feel the difference. Version A. She asks to move 19 to 1800 hours and you immediately bend, over-explain, and end with, "Is that better?" She reads negotiation as your default setting, which means more pokes are required to find the edge, and edge hunting becomes the evening's theme. Version B. You answer, "I'm set on 1900 hours, join me then or let's pick Thursday," and leave the air quiet. The stillness is your ally, like choosing a good spot for pills and letting the sun do the work. You offered an option, you kept the frame, and the moment relaxes around it. Notice what you did not do. You did not explain, defend, apologize, or attack. You simply stated your position and trusted it to hold weight. Now we formalize the method so it stops being vague advice and becomes muscle memory. We map boundaries across the 4 domains that cause the most friction: time, money, space, and communication. Time boundaries come first because they are the skeleton of trust. You propose a time that works, and when the time is nudged, you keep the original unless there is a genuine reason to change. The tone is unhurried, like an Oslo tram that arrives when it arrives with no need to honk. A simple line like, "I'm set on 7. If that's tight for you, we can do Thursday," carries more authority than 5 minutes of apologizing, and the quiet after you say it does most of the heavy lifting. Money boundaries matter because spending is a message about value, not generosity alone. Treat essentials as your arena, getting there, basic meals you choose, modest comforts, and refuse to buy compliance or attention, which is the transacting that breeds contempt. Complimentary spending sits in the middle and depends on stage and budget. You can cover dinner while she grabs dessert or vice versa, and a clean, "Let's split this, I'll vips you" can be warm in its clarity. When you say, "I don't purchase closeness, I build it," you remove the auction from the relationship and invite genuine enthusiasm. Women sense when money is being used as a substitute for presence, and the transaction kills the chemistry every time. Space boundaries make you less reactive and more more interesting. Keep the plan you set for yourself, whether that is a gym hour, a swim, or a short for love's live loop with coffee in a thermos, and let her opt in without pressure. If she bows out, you don't punish. You go, enjoy, and reconnect later with good energy instead of a ledger of sacrifices. The subtext is abundance of time, not scarcity of approval, and that calm abundance is contagious. When you return from your solo activity with good energy, she learns that your mood is self-generated, not dependent on her participation, and that independence is magnetic. Communication boundaries translate feelings into requests and requests into choices. You speak in first person, you name what you will do, and you do not dramatize or diagnose her motives. If something is off, you say, "I'm not okay with that tone. Let's pause and pick this up tomorrow," and then you actually pause, which teaches that your words have weight. You do not cold shoulder, you do not bait. You simply return to rolling, that steady calm, and let the fire cool by itself. The discipline here is in the pause. Most men either explode or collapse, and both responses train chaos. The pause trains peace. Ready to master these principles? Subscribe now to receive the complete 7-day implementation guide, exclusive boundary scripts for every situation, and transform your relationships through conscious leadership. Learn exactly what to say, when to say it, and how to maintain your center even under pressure. Now apply the scripts to the everyday frictions people actually have. When she pushes the time earlier, you answer, "Sticking with 19. Join me then, or let's move it to Friday," and you go quiet. Most of the time the test ends there. On the street, if she insists on a route you know is slower, you say, "I'm taking this way, meet me at the corner if you prefer yours," and you keep walking with an easy pace that invites, not drags. If she rejects the pool plan, you smile and say, "I'm still going for an hour." Text if you change your mind, and you bring back the lightness that comes from keeping promises to yourself. When she cooks something different from what you requested, you thank her and add, "I'm stepping out for the roast I had in mind. Want me to bring you anything?" And you mean it, which removes the power struggle while keeping your preference intact. As these patterns repeat, the temperature of the connection changes. She stops tugging the frame because the frame no longer wobbles, and affection begins to gather in the space where arguments used to live. Think of a winter evening where the house is quiet after a small dugnat of shared chores. Both people know what they carried, and neither needs a speech. In that quiet, trust grows without an announcement, and tests feel unnecessary rather than forbidden. Safety sits upstream of every boundary, so we design safeguards before we design responses. If there is verbal abuse, intimidation, or physical aggression, the protocol is immediate disengagement, not negotiation. You leave the environment, you contact help if needed, and you do not return to the discussion until everyone is calm. The calm no has a cousin called the gentle exit, which sounds like, "I'm not continuing like this. I'm stepping away now, we can revisit tomorrow," and then you actually step away. Think of it like choosing to wait out a squall at a cafe on Carl Johan rather than forcing your way through hail. Nobody impresses the weather by shouting at it, and composure beats bravado every time. Ethics also shape how you use attention. You do not deploy silence as punishment, you use pauses to reduce heat and increase clarity, and you never lie to create jealousy or urgency. Games produce short spikes of drama and long valleys of distrust, which is why your baseline is truth delivered with warmth. In a country where people often value understated communication, a simple "I meant what I said earlier and I'm keeping it" does more than a speech, because steadiness multiplies itself in both directions. Repair matters because even the best boundaries will sometimes be clumsy. When you misread a situation or step too hard, you apologize without groveling, you restate the boundary, and you offer a clean next step. An apology here is not a price you pay but a bridge you build, the way neighbors patch things after a noisy renovation with a plate of bowler and a smile. The pattern is accountability plus continuity, and over time that rhythm feels like home. Now we meet the classic objections that surface when you change the dance. The first is fear of loss. If you stop overgiving and start holding shape, will she leave? The answer is that you may lose someone who only enjoyed the overflow, and that is less a loss than a sorting. Many men discover that when the constant yes stops, the real yes from the right person begins, because the new frame invites participation rather than consumption. The woman who stays is the woman who wanted a partner, not a vending machine. Another objection is the label of coldness. When she calls you cold, she might be naming the absence of frantic energy she once used to measure care, and your task is to replace theatrics with reliability. You can say, "I'm not distant, I'm consistent and I'll show it the same way next week," and then you set two plans and keep both. Norwegians often trust what repeats more than what sparkles, and a month of kept plans warms more than a night of fireworks. Consistency is the long game, and the long game is where real relationships are built. Threats to end things are a different animal. A threat attempts to make your boundary negotiable through fear, and the antidote is refusal to bargain with ultimatums. You answer, "I don't continue under threats. If you want to talk, I'm here when we're both calm," and you let the silence stretch like a fjord that does not rush to close the gap. Most bluffs dissolve when they meet a shoreline that does not move, and if a real ending arrives, it arrives with dignity rather than panic. The last objection is whether seeding is ever healthy. The answer is yes when the reason is good, the timing is real, and the pattern remains balanced, which turns a concession into generosity instead of a leak. You say, "Your exam week matters. Let's shift to Saturday," or "You've planned this so I'll follow your lead tonight," and you mean it without keeping score. Mutuality fits beautifully with boundaries, like a ski track that lets two people glide side by side because both respect the grooves. A simple 7-day reset is enough to shift your baseline from pleasing to leading, and it works because repetition, not intensity, builds trust. You will keep living your normal life while threading one deliberate action through each day, so the change feels natural rather than theatrical. Start with time and space because calendars tell the truth. Choose 2 plans that matter to you this week and make them non-negotiable, then inform rather than negotiate around them. When a nudge comes, hold the time, offer a clean alternative and let the silence work. The next day, keep a solo plan that fills your lungs. You will notice that your mood lifts even if no one joins, which trains your nervous system to value presence over approval. Money follows, and with it the end of transactions disguised as romance. Draw the line between essentials you choose and cover, compliments you share, and extras you do not buy to secure attention. Practice the calm no with a friend first, including 10 seconds of quiet after your line so your body learns stillness. Keep your tone low, your shoulders relaxed, and your breathing slow enough to count a 4-beat in and a 6-beat out. Generosity returns on top of the spine, not instead of it. Invite her to lead an evening end to end, and follow her plan with curiosity while staying decisive about your own needs, which turns seating into a gift rather than a leak. Share chores without commentary, a light dugnad that clears dishes and resets the room so affection has space to grow. Close the week by reviewing where the frame held and where it bent. Write 3 sentences about what you did, 2 about how it felt, and 1 about tomorrow's adjustment. Measure proof with kept plans, steady spending, and fewer arguments rather than with dramatic moments. Long term, the work is less about dramatics and more about small repetitions that thicken the weave of trust. You keep proposing clear plans, you keep the calm no handy, and you keep the door open to good faith influence. Over weeks, the atmosphere shifts from vigilance to ease, the way a living room softens when the lamps come on. You notice fewer spikes of argument, shorter repairs, and a quieter confidence in both of you, which is how tests die without a funeral. Part of that quiet comes from letting generosity ride on structure instead of trying to replace it. You still surprise her with warmth, you still celebrate her wins, and you still give freely, but you do it inside the frame you set, so the gift lands as abundance rather than bribery. Think of inviting her to a Saturday morning loop along the harbor, grabbing warm waffles after, and then splitting the afternoon to handle your separate errands before meeting again. The day breathes because boundaries give it lungs. As the partnership matures, you begin to trade leadership without losing shape. On her night, you lean into her plan without sulking or micro-negotiating. On your night, you set the agenda and keep it with the same calm you expect from her, so the rhythm alternates like tracks on a ski trail, parallel and predictable. The practical markers remain simple and stubborn. You show up when you say you will, you say no before resentment can sprout, and you treat conflict as a signal to cool the scene and resume when the air is clear. If the past taught you to measure love by intensity, the present teaches you to measure it by reliability, which is less glamorous but far more durable. Every boundary you keep is a deposit in a trust account that pays compounding interest. The deposits are tiny and daily: on-time arrivals, fair spending, direct words, gentle exits, honest repair. The interest looks like ease in her shoulders and ease in yours, a shared expectation that the other person will do tomorrow what they did today. There will still be lapses because you are human and so is she. When you miss a cue or grow sharp, you catch it faster, own it sooner, and reset the line with less theater, which is how couples get good at being good rather than good at being dramatic. By now the question has changed shape. Are you the provider she trusts or the man she tests? It was never about paying more or caring less. It was about whether your presence has a spine. Provide what matters, your steady energy, your clear plans, your honest words, and stop providing what corrodes, your constant yes, your anxious spending, your fear of stillness. The rest organizes itself around that center. You can feel this center when you move through the day with uncomplicated decisiveness. You decide on a time and keep it. You listen to her perspective and incorporate what fits. You maintain your values without volume. You step away when pressure mounts. You leave room for her to be complex and for you to be kind without becoming a doormat. If you want a phrase to carry forward, let it be this: calm first, clear next, warm always. Calm keeps your nervous system from recruiting your worst moves, clear keeps your boundaries from dissolving under charm or stress, and warm keeps dignity on the table for both of you. A relationship built on those 3 pillars can take weather without capsizing. So you do not chase tests anymore, and you do not fear them either. You translate them as questions, you answer with behavior, and you let time make the case that words alone never could. You become the man whose yes means yes and whose no needs no explosion, a person she can relax beside because the ground does not move underfoot. In that stillness, trust takes root, and what began as a provocation ends as a promise kept. Start your transformation today. Click below to access the complete framework, exclusive scripts for every boundary scenario, daily practice guides, and the full 7-day reset protocol that will turn you from provider into the trusted man she naturally gravitates toward. Your journey to magnetic presence begins now.